I would say that community is one of the most important things, like in the postpartum period. And really, you highlight that part of it's not even that you're, like you live far away from your support system, like 5, 6 hours. It's like you are across the ocean. And then you probably throw in some language barriers, perhaps, and just the cultural issues that maybe pop up as well. And with me, I know for myself, my family, they live 3 hours away. And then my husband's family, they're about like 13 hours away. So it's still, I don't have that immediate community right here. So I really found what I needed to do was who are the people around me. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's the people that are in our lives that are paid to be there that perhaps become our community. And I can imagine being overseas, it's even friends and family, they really just can't come and visit, right? Once a month or even once every 6 months. So it's looking at who is part of my immediate circle. So I would imagine it could be teammates, wives, their friends, those pieces. But then I can imagine dynamics and different things that may not always be practical or comfortable. So
you're listening to Breaking the Ice podcast, a podcast that I created in 2020 to connect women within the hockey world. My name's Devin Dodaro, my husband's Charlie Dodaro, and we've played literally all over the world. We have 2 kids, 2 dogs, and let's just say hockey has taken my world by storm. What I've learned is that this community and these experiences are very specific, and you should not have to go through this alone. Through this podcast, I share the tools, resources, do's, don'ts, and what's helped me along the way while continuing to learn from each and every one of you. So lace them up and tune in for episodes twice a month. And make sure to follow the page on Instagram at Breaking the Ice Pod. Welcome back to the podcast. Happy you are tuning in today for a super awesome episode, which is actually very fitting for myself today. I was kind of listening to it back, finishing editing it tonight. My husband is currently on the road. He's in Utah, so he is getting in at like 4 a.m. tonight, coming in hot in the middle of the night. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to like sit down and get some editing out of the podcast because I've been dying to get another episode out to you guys. I know it's been a minute. The last one came out on my birthday, which is October 1st, and it's been way too long, but it's been just so hectic. And I feel like I say that all the time, and I hate saying that because it's just like, feels like it's just never ending. It just feels like it's life at this point, but it has certainly been an adjustment getting back into these long road trip schedules. It's very hard to find like consistency in my own schedule. And yeah, it's been a long day. I feel like my kids just had I don't know, it just was one of those days that felt like it was never ending. And I'm kind of feeling burnt out right now just with parenting, not because of my kids, but just because I feel like I haven't really had a lot of time for me. And part of my struggle too is I was just had a play date with my friend this afternoon, and we were talking, and I'm like, I need to figure out a way that like I can feel more balanced in this lifestyle. And I don't exactly always know like what I need or what I need to ask for, because I'm like, yes, I need time. And yes, I want to like run errands alone without having to like deal with like getting kids in and out of car seats. But I also like love being with my kids 24/7. And when my husband's home, I like want us all to have family time and all be together. But I also need to have alone time, need to have self-care time. So like I need to figure out a system so I'm like still benefiting from my nervous system relaxing. Because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm in a constant state of just like it's very hard for me to relax, which is funny because if you knew me back in, my younger years, pre-kids, like this girl knew how to relax. This girl knew how to have a good time. And now I feel like I'm just like, I just feel like I'm so like high strung a lot. And I need to work on that. And I need to work on just trying to like let things go and be more go with the flow. I'm trying, okay? I'm trying. But it's hard with kids to, get that balance. And it's a confusing thing because it's like I want to be with them all the time, but I also need alone time and one time with my husband and one time with my family and one time with my friends, and it's hard to balance it all. So, anyways, this whole tangent is basically worth saying like, if you are feeling that way, you're not alone. I'm right there with you. It's kind of that time of the season right before the holidays where it's not quite the excitement of the start of the season. It's not like really the middle, it's not really the end. It's just like you're kind of like at the start, getting going, getting used to it, getting acclimated. So, anyhow, this episode is really cool to me because I have followed this Instagram page for a long time. They're called the Mama Psychologists on Instagram. If you're not following them, they're a really great follow, and they put into words so often how I'm feeling at different stages of parenting. And it really helps me process and understand my feelings or something I might be going through with like a child, and how they provide a lot of tangible tips on how you can work through things. They're just like all around really amazing humans. They're both psychologists, they're both Canadian, and we sat down and I asked them as many questions as I could think of. I feel like I probably blacked out for part of the questions I wanted to ask because I don't usually get nervous for podcast interviews, but like the two podcasts that I've actually gotten really nervous for was this one and then one with Dr. Tracy, which is funny because they're two people that are just not even in the hockey world. They're therapists. And I am so fascinated by psychology. My dad is a child psychologist. I kind of have that brain in me just by nature. And so I follow a lot of therapists on Instagram because it's just something that I find so interesting. I listen to therapist podcasts. I'm in therapy myself. I find that therapy is just so useful and beneficial to understanding yourself, other people, patterns, behaviors. And a lot of us in this lifestyle are mothers or becoming mothers, and we're doing it at the same time as hockey, which is a very demanding schedule, job, unpredictability, uncertainty. And when you're entering motherhood, having the uncertainty, unpredictability can be very difficult. If you are someone that is just so go with the flow, maybe it may not come as difficult to you. For me, I personally feel like I have had a lot of challenges in my motherhood journey because I entered both of those new phases in Europe, not really having like my community and my long-term friends and my family around. Had both of my babies during COVID times. And so it was very an interesting way to enter like these pivotal years of my life where they're very transformative years where you kind of step into yourself and you figure out who you are, what you're capable of. And I just truly love this conversation. We talked a lot about like postpartum and how that can look, how you can identify, if you're starting to deal with a little bit of anxiety and depression past the normal like postpartum blues. I shared a little bit about my postpartum anxiety and depression after my second that basically took a toll on me for 2 years, if I'm being honest. We talk about why community is so important and how you can create that outside of hockey. If you're living abroad, you're living away from home, how you can, kind of have these conversations with your husband as you're entering this next chapter of your life and journey together. We talk about parenting and motherhood, solo parenting, all the things. So if you're a mom and you want a little bit of emotional support, this is a really great listen. You really can't go wrong. I welcome all motherhood tips, anything that can make my journey, really impactful. And honestly, a lot of the reason why I ask these questions is to better understand myself and to be a better mom and to, yeah, just do right by my kids. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're listening, please share and give them a follow. You will not regret it. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to thank today's sponsor, Little Bipsy. If you are a mom who loves neutrals, soft fabrics, and clothes your kids can actually live in, Little Bipsy is it. Their pieces are minimal, comfortable, and honestly, some of the only things my kids reach for without a fight. You can shop their new arrivals and all of the essentials at littlebipsy.com and use the code BreakingTheIce20 for 20% off your first order. I'll link everything for you in the show notes. Thank you, Little Bipsy, for supporting the show. You guys are in Canada. What part?
We're in Lethbridge.
Okay.
South of
Where
Calgary.
are you from? Yeah. Where are you from originally?
I'm from San Diego. So,
okay.
So many of our friends are Canadian. I feel like we both,
I bet,
through the hockey season, start to talk with Canadian accents because we're just around Canadians all the time. I'm like I say like my O's, like, oh, like dragged out, a little bit, and it's so funny.
You like go up at the end of your sentences.
Yeah, yes. My family's like, you're talking different. I'm like, it's probably because I'm around like majority 90% Canadians all season long. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yes, but we'll just dive in. I'm so excited to talk to you guys. I feel like I could talk about postpartum and motherhood forever because it's currently like the season of life that I'm in. And I know that so many women in our community are going to benefit from this episode because it's something that is very niche in our community. Like there's a lot of ways that we need support and tips and all the things. So thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. I'm really interested in the hockey world. My little guy is like loving everything hockey and he really wants to just go far. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're just along for the ride, but I'm just experiencing hockey life as a mom and just how crazy and intense it can be. So it's very different on your end being a hockey wife, but yeah, some of the same things probably pop up, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I follow some like hockey mom accounts and it is, and also with my husband, his two brothers, they all played hockey. So just seeing how much like their mom had, all the practices at like 6 a.m. and driving all over the place, the games, it's a lot. So lots of credit to you as well. And Chelsea, do you have kids that play hockey?
No, my son is in judo, so we're trying to avoid hockey because we live out of town. So driving.
I don't blame you. Spare yourself. I'm just kidding.
So, but the judo world can get very competitive as well. Like my sister and brother do it, and they travel all over the world for most of the year.
Wow.
They play or not play, I guess. What do you call it? You don't play judo.
They fight.
They're really high up there too. So it seems intense. The travel seems even worse than hockey, I think. But
I had
a lot.
No idea about this. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I would love to start off asking you guys about you. So who you are, what you guys do, and how you use your platform to educate, new moms and those venturing through all the different stages of life with their kids. And yeah, just would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Start right at the beginning. Chelsea and I both met. We're working at the hospital at the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Program here in Lethbridge. And we became fast friends. And I think that was, 11 years ago now. It seems like a lifetime ago before kids. And then we worked there for a couple of years and then we went our separate ways, but we were both getting our master's in counseling psychology. So then we always kept in touch. And then fast forward, I have my first baby in 2017 and it hit me like a ton of bricks, postpartum anxiety. I really, really struggled in that postpartum period, which took me completely by surprise. Pregnancy was was okay. I thought, okay, you know what? Baby comes, everything's going to be good. I'm off of work. This is going to be amazing. However, baby comes and I found that I couldn't sleep. I really researched all the time. I had so many intrusive thoughts. Postpartum hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. So that was one piece that I was not prepared for at all, but thinking like, okay, I'm a psychologist. I should be able to handle this. But then really kind of reaching out and feeling like, okay, there's not a lot of support out there for moms postpartum mental health wise, right? There's a lot of support for baby feeding, sleeping, all of those things. But even as a psychologist, it's like I didn't learn about postpartum mental health, postpartum anxiety, depression, any of that in graduate school. So I really felt like, okay, what is going on? Like, why is there really not a lot of support? And this is about 8 years ago, kind of before the era of everything being on Instagram and being able to find so much information just at your fingertips. I ended up using Google I went down the Google rabbit hole so many times, and it just led me to like really, really dark places. And then Chelsea has her baby 2019, and I will let you tell that story, Chelsea.
Sounds good. Well, Caitlin was actually pregnant with her second when I was pregnant with my first. So our kids are actually 6 weeks apart-ish.
Gosh, that's amazing.
So I actually had my son, they weren't supposed to be 6 weeks apart. I had my son 3 months early. So we were flown to Calgary, so 2 hours, 3 hours north of us, whatever it is. And so we lived in the NICU there for 3 months. And so I was talking to Caitlin, and obviously, well, there wasn't a lot for postpartum moms. There really wasn't anything either for like a medical mom or a mom that had a traumatic birth, or it's kind of similar story to Caitlin. I felt like I was drowning. I was like, I'm supposed to quote unquote know what to do. I'm supposed to know how to cope. I'm supposed to have all these tools in my toolbox, and I can't even function really. And so I think I was still in the NICU in Calgary, and Caitlin's like, hey, do you want to start an Instagram page? And in our postpartum fogs, we were both like, this sounds like the best time and the best idea to do this. Like, why would we want to do this right now? And so it actually became a really good outlet for me in just like learning. And I jumped into a bunch of trainings, and that was my way to like cope and heal, was to like learn and understand why I responded the way I did and like what was happening emotionally for me. And so we just kind of a happy accident, really, what
It
led us
really
down
was a
this
happy
path.
accident. We didn't intend, like, it wasn't purposeful at all. Like, really, what we've created was just, I don't know how. I'm like, okay, maybe like we should start an Instagram page because it was right before the pandemic too. And it's like, okay, there really wasn't a lot of good information out there. And I mean, there's a lot of sources where you can find anything on the internet, but I'm like, do these people like really know what they're talking about? Not saying we know everything, but our clinical background and being psychologists, we were like, okay, there are things out there that just aren't necessarily helpful. And there are things out there that are very helpful that moms should know, right? They should know about intrusive thoughts. I had no idea about intrusive thoughts before I had my kids. That, you know what, like 100% of moms have these thoughts of like dropping their baby and their baby falling down the stairs and being like critically injured, or even intrusive thoughts where it's you throw your baby or you hurt your baby kind of like on purpose, right? So these thoughts are actually quite common. And just knowing that it's not that I want to do this, it's our brain's way of kind of coping with all the potential like dangers around us. And they just emerge as these really invasive, uncomfortable thoughts. But knowing that there isn't anything wrong with you, it doesn't mean that you want to hurt your baby, but this is really evolution's way of protecting baby and protecting you. So things like that, it's like, well, that would have been helpful to know. So I wasn't thinking I was like absolutely insane for a while.
Right.
So those are the things that it's like, okay, people need to really kind of understand and know about this, and how is postpartum mental health like not really a big thing. There's a few people that were around us that focused on postpartum mental health, but everything we saw was more like postpartum depression. And I didn't really fit with that. I'm like, I'm not depressed, but I'm like anxious as fuck and I can't like really go outside or even drive downtown with my child because I have these thoughts of getting into a terrible accident, things like that. Just knowing and understanding aspects about postpartum anxiety would have been so helpful for me. So then we started posting on Instagram, and it was like we look back on some of our old posts like in the beginning 2020, and I was like, oh, ooh, that was really like ugly, some of the formatting and things like that. But it's like the message was the same, right? You're not alone. There are other people that are going through this, and you're not a bad mom for going through some of these phases. So that really resonated with a lot of people. And then, of course, you have pandemic, and then everybody's mental health went to shit after that. And then people were really looking for resources and ways to like cope and manage with what was going on around them.
Yes, and you guys do honestly such a beautiful job with your page because there's so many things that I've thought about that it's hard to put into words how you're feeling or what you're kind of thinking in your head, and then you'll do a post that just fits so perfectly what me or someone else is going through. So you guys do a really good job with that. And I agree. I think the pandemic definitely shifted things for a lot of people in terms of motherhood. And kind of piggybacking off of what you guys were saying, I had both my kids in Europe, 2020 and 2022, which was a very interesting experience. So it was COVID, and then on top of it being in a foreign country with all of their regulations and rules. And we put so much focus on like preparing for the baby, like getting all the things, getting the right stroller, getting the right car seat, the room. It's hard to, when you don't have those support systems and the resources, to figure out what you need to do to prepare for postpartum. And what I found interesting is that with my first, I really didn't have too bad of postpartum, but with my second, I did. And it snuck up on me, and I didn't realize it until about 3 months postpartum. I started having these thoughts, and I've shared this on a podcast before about how I was like having thoughts that something was going to happen to me. I finally caught on to it a few months postpartum because I was hopping from illness to illness to illness and convincing my brain that was going to happen. And that was something that I had never heard about postpartum until I started like digging for it. Like, what's wrong with me? And it actually went on for almost 2 years. It got better after I stopped nursing, which I did for 15 months, but it was honestly torture. Like, in my mind, I lost so much weight. I just was so anxious, and I feel like it didn't fit the textbook postpartum of what I've read about, which is kind of to what you were saying. It was like, I'm not depressed. I'm like high functioning. I'm still doing all the things, but I wasn't really there. Like, I wasn't present. I was on Google constantly, like just going on and on. And so I guess one of my questions is, how can you kind of differentiate like the baby blues after having a baby with like all the hormone drops versus, okay, maybe there's something more going on? Because yeah, like I said, for me, it was very hard to be like, okay, this is mental. Like, this isn't physical. Like, there's nothing physically wrong with me, but this is like, something's not right that I'm having all these thoughts.
Do you want to do this?
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah, so when we're looking at baby blues, I mean, when you look at the research or like textbook behind it, I would argue almost everybody goes through baby blues. Not necessarily where it's like super intense, but there's often a little bit more teariness there. You're often more emotional. You go through the biggest hormone crash that you're ever going to go through in your whole entire life, right? There's just so much happening to your body from a physical standpoint, ignoring all of it, the emotional. You have a new baby, like all of those other pieces that are going to layer on top of it. And so when we're looking at baby blues, we look within the first 3 to 4 weeks, right? We want to see that start to improve. We want to see some better emotional regulation, which is hard also because you're in sleep deprivation. You're trying to learn how to feed a new baby, right? Like all of these pieces can make it kind of feel really convoluted and hard to sort out. But what we're really looking at when we're looking at like a perinatal mood disorder, like a depression or anxiety, is it usually is either a prolonged, so We see it months and months and months later. A lot of people will come to us and be like, I actually started feeling my worst at like 6 or 7 months postpartum. Like I got through the fourth trimester, as they call it, and then I started to feel terrible. And we're like, that's actually really common, right? So if you're noticing it later on, really common for that to pop up. The other piece of it is your symptoms often will get worse or they'll kind of stay the same, right? So baby blues, we'll see like a little bit of ups and downs. We'll see, and then we'll see this like gradual improvement. Whereas if there's that depression or anxiety, you're going to see it either stay steady of like not improving, or you're going to see that dip. So those are the main things that we look for. And in terms of like symptoms, for depression, we're looking for like difficulties with connecting with your baby, feeling more emotional, not being able to regulate. And I always hate saying this, but if you're not able to rest or sleep when you have the opportunity to, because people will come and be like, well, I have a new baby. Of course, I'm not sleeping. But we're really looking for if somebody has the baby for a bit, or, baby is having like a 2 hour stretch of sleep and you're just like not able to rest in those moments. Difficulty connecting with others and like difficulty connecting even with yourself or with baby. Like all of these are like warning signs that we look for. On the anxiety side, it can be similar, but again, like those intrusive thoughts that Caitlin's been talking a lot about, we're looking for those, right? We're looking for things that you're not able to do in your day-to-day life, like walking down the stairs because you're afraid you're going to drop baby, or, different things like that. So there are signs and symptoms for each that we can look for, but in terms of like overall, it's really that like steady state of not feeling an improvement in any of your symptoms.
Okay. Very interesting. And how did you guys, so, and with the NICU element on top of it, because there are, a lot of women that I follow on Instagram too that go through that experience, which is another added layer because you're then, kind of living at the hospital and your baby's not coming home with you. How can women that have kids in the NICU cope with that?
For me and lots of women that I worked with, it's you often don't know till you're out of the NICU, right? Because you're just in this like steady state of survival. And for me, my like turning point is I pumped because when we got out of the NICU, my son was still on a feeding tube and oxygen, and I was like, I can't learn to breastfeed on top of all the other things. So I was a pumping mom, and I remember like I maybe it was like 8 months postpartum. I was like sitting there pumping and I was just like raging, like just fuming. And my husband looked at me, he's like, "You okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm so mad. Like, I'm so mad. I can't even like see straight." He's like, "Why don't you just stop pumping?" And like, I don't know why that like thought never even like dawned to me. And I was like, I guess I could. He's like, "Well, you're so unhappy. Just stop." And I was like, not that it was that simple in the process for me emotionally, but I was like, well, yeah, like I could totally just, like, I could just stop. Like, if it's impacting me this negatively, like, I could just make that choice. And so that for me was like my sign of like, I'm really not managing in my life very well. So I think lots of NICU moms I've talked to have this kind of like moment, or they're like, I like went and saw my friend's baby and I sat in my car and I cried because I just like couldn't believe what my story was and like how much that's still impacting me. Like it's just like triggers that we aren't really aware of. And then it just kind of creeps up on you. But it usually is after, just because there isn't any of that space outside of that like survival mode that most parents are in at that time.
Yeah, that's very fair. So with the hockey life, most people, unless you're very lucky, are moving every single year for a new hockey season. So you're typically going to like a new city. A lot of girls follow me that are in Europe. They're going to different countries, giving birth abroad, giving birth in just places they're not familiar with. For me, one of the biggest things was not having a community. How important is that going into that postpartum period? Because I do feel like the lack of that made me feel so isolated that it was very hard for me to function, even like within my household with my spouse. Like, it's just you have to put so much on them too because they're kind of all you have. So it's a tough situation for a lot of people.
Yeah. I would say that community is like one of the like most important things like in the postpartum period. And really you highlight that part of it's not even that you're, like you live far away from your support system, like 5, 6 hours. It's like you are across the ocean. And then you probably throw in some language barriers, perhaps, and just the cultural issues that maybe pop up as well. And with me, I know for myself, my family, they live 3 hours away. And then my husband's family, they're about like 13 hours away. So it's still, I don't have that immediate community right here. So I really found what I needed to do was who are the people around me, right? And even if it is like paid people that are there to help you, right? Like a nanny is there, your doctor, your therapist. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's the people that are in our lives that are paid to be there that perhaps become our community. And I can imagine being overseas, it's even friends and family, they really just can't come and visit, right? Once a month or even once every 6 months. So it's looking at who is part of my immediate circle. So I would imagine it could be teammates, wives, their friends, those pieces. But then I can imagine dynamics and different things that may not always be practical or comfortable. So it's looking at, okay, where do I live? What is the neighborhood like around me, right? My doctor, the barista at the coffee shop. Who are those like little small pieces of community that help me feel connected and feel like seen and heard and valued? Because I can imagine wherever in Europe, right, people are living that, okay, maybe they're not in a house, right? Maybe they're in an apartment with like 100 other families, and it's just harder to find that sense of community. Right? So it's looking really outside of what typically community is when we think in North America, the States, Canada, and it's like, okay, maybe it is our doctor, the babysitter, the therapist, the barista, the daycare, teachers at our child's school. So you kind of have to look out of the box for that sense of community, I would think.
Yeah, I love that answer because it is so different everywhere you go. Like you might be a new mom
Yeah.
on a team with a bunch of younger girls that don't have any
Mhm.
kids, that don't really know how to support you. You know, you might be having a baby right at the start of the season. You don't know any of the girls. And so I think a lot of people struggle with feeling like a burden. Like even if people say like, let me know if I can help you. It's like, oh no, I got it because I should know how to do this on my own, or I with the language barrier too on top of that, that's one of the things that's really hard to even find that stuff abroad. I wish there was more resources for that.
Yeah, I can just imagine how tricky it would be. And I mean, now we're in the era where we can FaceTime people, where sometimes even my parents, they're only 3 hours away. If my kids are driving me crazy, I'm like, okay, we're going to FaceTime grandma. And okay, my daughter sits there on FaceTime and my mom like reads to her. And they do that for like half an hour. And it's like, okay, now I can go do some other things.
Yeah.
Right? She's kind of like taken care of in a way. So it's really being like, sometimes you just have to be like really novel. And it's like, okay, what is going to work for me? Sometimes it is like, okay, who are the babysitters? Who can we trust? Maybe a team member knows somebody, right? And it's really just becoming creative with who are the people that we can trust and that feel like you can become closer to.
In what ways can our partners prepare to support us postpartum?
That's a good question. And I think that I imagine can also be challenging with scheduling and things like that and away travel and all of those pieces. And so I think the earlier you can have the conversation, the better, which I mean, hindsight's 2020, so that's not always possible. But
Yeah.
you know, with couples that or people that we work with, if they're pregnant, we do encourage them to go through like a postpartum coping plan. And it is having those conversations with your spouse about boundaries. And, you know, you might not know, especially if it's your first child, what those things will look like. But we just say start the conversation because then at least it's on the table, right? And so, you know, when those issues do arise later on, you can be like, oh yeah, we started this conversation. We've had it, right? It might also be like, hey, you know how I act when I'm stressed. So could you just like maybe let me know if you notice any of those things. when we're responding in postpartum, we're not necessarily going to respond totally out of left field where it's like something that we've never done before. Sometimes the common stress responses are still going to be how we respond in those moments. So it might be that you like avoid everybody and you like retreat and hide away. And it's like, okay, to your husband, if you notice me doing that, could you let me know? Because I probably won't be able to see it at that time, right? Or, if you notice that I'm, pacing the house, can you just like check in on me, right? Because maybe I'm feeling a little bit anxious, right? It's like having those like, what do I do when I'm stressed? And can you be my second set of eyes in those moments? A lot of new moms actually struggle with like passing responsibility to their husbands. It's just like, especially if you're the primary caregiver, you're the one at home with the baby all the time. And so sometimes that division of labor conversation can be really helpful. So, even if they aren't home or they're gone throughout the day, it's like, could you just do bath time? It has an end, it has a beginning, gives me 20 minutes to myself. And I can feel like that's a duty that I can like pass off, right? Or if you're gone for a few days, what does that look like when you come home so that I can just like have a minute to breathe? So I think as much as you can having those conversations, and it's also good to talk with your spouse about like dads can go through a postpartum experience. There's this big debate about what to call it, currently still called postpartum depression and anxiety or
Yeah.
perinatal depression and anxiety. Research shows about one in 10 dads will experience some kind of like postpartum mood shift, which is probably underreported, I would imagine, just because it's
Yeah.
under research just as much as women's issues are. So, having that like, hey, if you're struggling, like, how can we be aware of that, right? Because dads often have symptoms in a different capacity where it's like that, like provider, even though it's like a traditional thing, but it is like, I need to provide for my family. I'm really stressed about this. This makes me feel really anxious. I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like a lot of that language can come out for dads.
Okay. And then do you guys both have two kids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how did it look like for you guys? Like how did you prepare or how did you prepare differently for your second after going through these experiences the first time?
For myself, my first postpartum experience and my second postpartum experience were vastly different. And that's why we also say that just because you had postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression with your first, it doesn't mean that you're going to have it with your second or third or subsequent. So my anxiety was like so high with my first one. And then for my second one, I was feeling like, oh boy, it's going to come back and it's not going to be good. However, I was in a place in my life where I felt more supported by my partner. I also felt like I had more community because I spoke about my experience. I talked about my experience a little bit more. I reached out to friends and talked about postpartum and postpartum mental health a little bit more. And I just knew more. I was more educated about postpartum in that time when I was pregnant with my second. And even though I was anxious and feeling like, okay, it's good, not going to sleep, like this isn't going to be good, get all the things ready, like I just need more support. I had really no postpartum anxiety with my second.
Wow.
My anxiety really, I don't want to say went away, but it was very much like such a tiny part of my life with my second that it was really surprising for myself, for my husband. With my first, I had a fear of SIDS, as most like moms do, but I was obsessed with it. I was researching. I was like checking stats. I was looking at all of like the SID deaths in Alberta, in Canada, and like breaking down those numbers and trying to figure out, okay, this is my chance of this happening. It was really unhealthy. But with my second, I didn't even use a monitor. I mean, her bedroom was right next to ours, but I'm like, I think I'm okay. Like we don't need a monitor. Like because then I would get really like obsessed with that and just listen and watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, you know what? I don't even need that. Like I'm okay. She's gonna be okay. I'm okay. We're okay. So it's a really important thing to know. Just because you struggled with your first or your second, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen in subsequent ones. And the same thing can be said for if you didn't struggle with your first or your second, and then your third or fourth comes along and you are struggling, like that can happen too.
I think with social media now, and like you said, the influx of information that there is out there, there's a lot of negative information too, and the algorithm that feeds that to you. How can you kind of compartmentalize or have healthy boundaries with that? Because you can get sucked into that. Like, okay, is this going to happen to me? Is this going to happen to my kids? It's like, it's easy to get into that spiral, and it's really hard to stop once you get into that.
Yeah. I can imagine Instagram, like 2017, like it was a thing, but it wasn't what it is now, right? People weren't necessarily, it was just like your filtered pictures. But I can imagine if I had that back then, it would not have been good. But we find that a lot, moms will say that, yes, their algorithm is tailored to, if they have anxiety, then it's posts about anxiety, it's medical moms, it's moms who their children have died tragically, right? So they're getting all of these stories all the time. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of moms that I work with, I have them set a time where it's like, okay, I'm going to go on social media for half an hour. I'm going to look at, at my friends, the things that I want to look at, the things that make me feel good, shopping, whatever that may be. And then it's like, I'm going to put it away. So they contain it for small parts of their day, because otherwise it can become, now I'm looking like every 10 minutes and now I'm being fed another story, and it can just go on and on and on. And another thing that can be helpful is to really only follow the people that I don't necessarily want to say like make you feel good or make you feel positive. But if somebody makes you feel anxious, or you get that like feeling in your body while you're looking at their content, then that's your sign to, I'm just not going to follow this person anymore. So it's following people that I want to see their content, because I really like, their ideas, their recipes, their things that going to lift me up, rather than spark that like dread and anxiety.
Yes. When I'm on social media, it feels like it's tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And I mean, it can feel like you're waiting for the ball to drop in your own family. And I think like what could be some grounding techniques too, on top of like the boundaries with social media, that you guys would suggest with that? Because I find myself still like, I'm out of the postpartum, and I would say this is more maybe just like motherhood, like it feels like more of a generalized anxiety. Like it's not debilitating to me, I guess, in a sense, but I do get very fearful, like going out to Target. I'm like looking around for the threats. Like I feel like I'm in like fight or flight basically at all times, trying to protect my kids. And it does go back to the boundaries of social media, but like, how can we not live in that fear all the time that something bad is going to happen?
Yeah, that's a fair question for sure. I think one thing that we love is mantras. So like my thoughts aren't facts, right? Like right now I'm walking into the store, is the same anxiety talking to me, or is there something around me that is threatening? And not that we're gonna necessarily know, but we can look around and be like, okay, I don't currently see anything right now. This is just my anxiety talking to me, right? It's, paying attention to it, acknowledging it, but also being like, it's okay that I don't have to give it space right now, which takes practice. I'm not saying it's gonna like be overnight, but a lot of moms find that helpful just to like talk themselves through it, right? Because we do try to avoid the anxiety, especially like it's like everything as a mom, right? You're like worried about 17 things of the day and 17 ways that your kid is gonna injure themselves or run across the street not looking, or whatever it is. It could be so many things. And so I think acknowledging it and saying I don't have this space for it right now is okay, right? It's just like it's there. I know it's there, but I have to carry on right now. In terms of grounding, a lot of times it's just like trying to be mindful, like in the moment, right? If your kids are at the park and you're feeling like, okay, I'm just like sitting on the edge of my seat, right? Looking around, looking for dangers, being like, don't fall and crack your head open, or, whatever that might be. It could be like getting up and going and like pushing them on the swing and like just being in the moment with them. It could be going down the slide and like forgetting that you're the adult for a second. It could be just like paying attention to like the sounds around you, right? Like just being really like in the moment as much as possible can really help with some of those anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one thing that I really liked what you said, Kelsey, is that playfulness element too, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to go and I'm going to push you on the swing and I'm going to laugh and I'm going to go down the slide and just be playful with them can really help just like bring you into the moment rather than being like in your head in the anxiety. And one piece that I find really helpful is this an anxiety thought or is this like a logical thought? Right. As I'm going into Target, I'm like looking at the person over there. It's like, well, what if they have whatever? Is this an anxiety thought or is this like a logical thought? And usually if a thought starts with what if, it's an anxiety thought. And it's a really good way of like framing it. What if this? What if that? Oh, that's my anxiety thought. No, that's an anxiety thought again. And just catching those thoughts can be helpful in like stopping them before you're in that rabbit hole, before you're in that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that. I'll scan like, does that person like, does their behavior seem weird? And it's like, it's sad that we have to live in that, world right now. It's not a good feeling. And I think it makes us good moms that we're like wanting to protect our kids, so much that it's like, causing this, but it can cause a lot of like emotional turmoil for sure.
Yeah, because you're always scanning for danger, right? Yes. And that's the part where we can't necessarily just turn off everything and be oblivious to the world around us. And it's like you are going to hear, obviously, a lot of things and social media, news, whatever it may be. And we can't just like turn it off. But it's also recognizing it's like, am I scanning for danger when I'm like in my own neighborhood that is a safe place? Right. We're at the school, there's safe people, right? Everybody around us is a safe person. And kind of challenging some of those anxiety thoughts because it's exhausting to live and feel like you are hyper vigilant like 100% of the time because you're just scanning for threats constantly.
Yeah. It's so funny too, because I'll ask my husband, I'm like, when you go to the grocery store, are you like looking around for like where the exits are and like looking at people all the time? He's like, no, not really. I'm like, well, you need to start doing it. He's like,
watch it.
Zero anxiety. I'm like, would love to think like this. Like I love this for you,
Just go to sleep and have no thoughts, just head hit the pillow and
literally.
It's like,
I know.
Actually, if it's any consolation, our brains are wired to change starting in pregnancy. And that like hypervigilance turns on more in women.
I don't know the exact phrase, but in pregnancy, I think there's like a form of anxiety or depression that can happen while you're pregnant as well before the baby even comes. Is there a phrase for that?
Probably just perinatal. Like they're shifting more from postpartum to perinatal just to talk about like the whole kind of time frame.
Okay.
So
what does that look like? Is that kind of a similar as postpartum anxiety and depression? Is it different?
And it can be. It's probably more future focused, obviously, because the baby is not here yet. So a lot of the anxiety, it can be related to that. Or if somebody has a history of like pregnancy loss or medical complications, things like that, then you can notice that some of the anxiety arises around that due to experience. So it kind of depends on like where their story has come from. But typically it is like I'm anxious, like it's the moms who have a Doppler, right, and are checking for the heartbeat all the time or counting kicks all the time, right? And they're just very, I'd say, hyper focused on ensuring that baby's safe while pregnant and things like that, where it can feel really hard just to like go about their day-to-day life without focusing on like the health and wellness of yourself or your baby. So it can for sure come up in pregnancy. It's not as talked about, but I think again, that's why there's that shift of language from postpartum to perinatal, just to say like it can happen at any time.
Yes. What are some grounding tips for moms, not necessarily new moms, but just moms in general? What are some things that they can do to find more balance in their lives? I feel like I keep going back to like, we're moving, we're going to new teams, but that's kind of just like the reality to that we feel like sometimes we're living in just chaos with the kids. We don't really get many breaks during the season. Like, I guess maybe what's worked for you or what have you seen that works for other people to not feel like you're running on fumes all the time? If that's
that's so hard.
That's part of motherhood, I think, busy and
well, Caitlin and I both have husbands that kind of work shift work. So Caitlin's husband works shift work, and mine's a farmer. So there's seasons of life where we don't see him
Yeah.
often. So I think from that perspective, we've had to learn to juggle solo parenting and what that looks like, and going to the activities, planning the things, juggling the whole mental load of like the home essentially, right? Because you're the one that's there and living in it. And I say this as we're in the middle of harvest, and I haven't seen my husband since Friday. So I I think it is really hard, and communication is going to be one of the big things because a lot of resentment can build up, right? It can feel frustrating when you're carrying the brunt of the mental load. It can feel like, how aren't you thinking of all of these things? And they just like can come in and come out, and you're like, did not none of this like cross your brain? And it often doesn't. Like it truly like they just like don't think the same way. And so communication is a big one. Two, being intentional with the moments you have. And we talk a lot about self-care. I don't love the word self-care anymore because I think it's a bit of a hot topic. It's like this like catchphrase of like, go to the spa, it's like that. I'm lucky if I can like pee with the door closed. So, my spa, that's my spa. So I think it's being really intentional with what the time we have. So whether that's, what, the kids are going to go to bed and I could do the dishes, but I'm going to take 10 minutes, put a timer on and like doom scroll on my phone because I just need to like zone out. Or it's, I'm going to have, driving to school, I'm going to put my headphones in and the kids can like have their moment, but I'm just going to listen to what I need to hear that I want to listen to for 10 minutes. Or, so it's really just like utilizing those moments that you have and being intentional with it because it can feel like nothing, right? But if we really try to shift our mindset around it of like, okay, I'm just going to do this for me for these like couple minutes, sometimes that can just give us like these little reprieves of like, okay, I've had my like mindful minute, I can reset and go back to doing like the other things that I was doing.
It's funny that you said solo parenting. I'm like, I can't believe I haven't even like said that word. But yeah, that's so true. Like so many of us, it's like a week at a time sometimes. And then it's hard because your spouse comes back and they're exhausted from traveling and the games and all the things and just like finding out a way to, make it work so that both people feel supported can be hard sometimes, but I love what you're saying about how trying to recognize like what you need in that moment or even just planning in advance. Like if you know your husband's coming back from a road trip that day, like knowing you'll probably need a break after 7 days and communicating that to them, I think has helped me because there was certainly times where he'd come home and I'm just like at my like absolute last, brain cell and like I'm just like, take the kids, I'm out of here. And he's like, oh, welcome home, glad to be back. Like I'm out, I'm going.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we call it a transition. Oh, sorry, Caitlin.
So
No, like when our busy seasons, it's hard because my husband's gone. So I get my routine, right? Like the beginning's hard, and I'm like, I got my groove. I got, I know what gotta do. We got the system, and he comes in and he like wrecks my system. We joke
Yeah.
about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a harvest widow, and then you come in and you wreck my new systems, and I got it going, and then you want to like do everything differently. So we just like give ourselves like a couple days, 2, 3 days, because we're like, we know the kids are gonna be like out of sorts because like dad hasn't been home, like it's just gonna feel a little chaotic. And so we just like talk about it. We just like call it what it is. We're just like give it a name. And we're like, here, we know it's just gonna like find some time to find a new footing when he comes home.
Yes. Caitlin, were you going to say something?
And I find for myself, after my husband's been gone, like 4 days, he works probably like 12, he's gone 12 hours. So the kids are sleeping and then they're in bed, hopefully by the time he comes home. And then knowing that, yes, he's tired, but I'm also tired. So it's like, what part can he take on? And even though it's like, okay, have supper, that's ready, we're doing cleanup, your part is bedtime, like do bath in bed. And then I don't have to do that. That's off my plate. I can go do whatever I want, but now that's your part. And then it can be, the next day you got supper and bath and bed. So he's taking on more of that parenting role, not like boom, first day off, but it's like, okay, day 2, day 3, day 4, things like that. So, and that just goes back to communication. Right? Because if you don't communicate that, but then you're like pissed off and he's like, what's going on? Why are you so mad? It's talking about it, right? This is my expectation, right? How can you meet this, or where can we meet in the middle?
Totally. Yeah. I love both of those answers. And yeah, it's funny, Chelsea, I was thinking like often feel that way too about like when the husband comes back. It's like, so happy you're back. Love to have you home. Love to get that break. But it's almost like, oh my gosh, I've been here and I'm like structured. I'm getting the kids in bed by 7:15. Then he comes back and it's like 8:15. The kids are in bed. And I'm like, what is happening? No, you get on schedule with us right now. We're not doing this the other way around. So it does take a little bit. I talk about that with girls all the time on the podcast. They're like, love my husband, but it's a little disruptive. Like everybody's so, like, this is like a generalized thing, you know, if your husband leaves and it's like, there's no consistency in the schedule. So I think, yeah, like trying to create that stability inside of your own, what you can control is important for sure. I wanted to ask if you guys have any favorite like resources, obviously besides your own page, that you would recommend to new moms, moms in general, like books, podcasts, anything like that are helpful to you.
We wrote a book in 2023. It was released called Not Your Mother's Postpartum. And that was a labor of love. It took us longer than actually being pregnant to write that book. So it was about 2 years in the making, and it's been out for a couple of years now. And that was another thing that we found. There really wasn't a good book out there for moms that had to do with postpartum mental health. There was, the what to expect when you're expecting better, those things, but really that's like our mom's era. And there wasn't a lot out there that talked about postpartum anxiety, birth trauma, body image, relationship struggles after baby. So we wrote that in about 2 years, and it's been a wonderful resource for a lot of moms. And we've had such like wonderful feedback on it that it's been like one of our biggest accomplishments, I think. So that's on Amazon and it ships worldwide too. So if anybody's like in Europe, that can be a wonderful resource as well.
Okay, cool. I'll put that in the show notes too. If you want to send that to me also,
Yeah.
and I'll just link it and people can check it out. If both of you can each say something, but if there is any advice you could give to a new mom, a mom in general, maybe in this hockey life that's struggling, finding balance in the new chapter, the new season that they're in, what?
I would say talk about it, and talk to the people that you trust, because staying silent really breeds isolation. And often when people stay silent, then they fester internally, and then it turns into a lot of negative thoughts about self and others. Whereas if you were to open up and be vulnerable, of course, not with everybody, but with the people that you trust, that really brings connection. And it's kind of that me too, right? Like I really struggled in that period. Me too.
I think for me, it's as cheesy as it is, it's okay not to be okay. Like it's okay not to know, everything. It's okay not to understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And it's okay to admit that you're not feeling okay, because until we're able to say those things, it's really hard to create change for yourself.
Yes, I love that. And then I want to end on just if people want to follow you guys, they want to see what you're doing. I know you guys have a couple of courses on your website as well. Where can they find all of that?
So you can follow us at Mama Psychologists on Instagram. We also have a counseling agency that is across Canada, and we have a therapist that works with American clients as well. And we really found that we couldn't see all the people individually for therapy that wanted to see us. So we put together a team of perinatal mental health professionals. We have an occupational therapist. We have a therapist that specializes in sex struggles, couple therapists, child and adolescent therapists. So we put together a really amazing team that sees individuals across Canada in person in Lethbridge and Camrose, but virtually across Canada and the US. So that has been our last labor of love for the past 12, 14 months that we've been really pouring a lot of ourselves into. And then on our website, mamapsychologist.ca, we do have a course that's called Beyond Baby Blues that really goes into a lot of psychoeducation on postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, birth trauma, sleep struggles, relationship struggles, mental load of motherhood. So those are things that can be found on that website as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for coming on the podcast today and just sharing all your knowledge and tips with our community. And I know that people will really benefit from this episode. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.